everybody wants to get united. Like, what we gotta do is meet everybody on 149th Street at the bench.
So you've developed an interest in graffiti and you're looking to become a graffiti artist. In today's video, I'm going to teach you guys how to do that. But because that is a very simple thing to do, that would make for a very short video, so we're going to take things one step further. So I'm going to be pointing you guys in the direction of great informational sources that can let you hit the ground running. We're going to be talking about the difference between a graffiti artist and a writer, which is a very important distinction. And we're going to be talking about what it takes to become a king in graffiti, as well as what it takes to become a legend in graffiti. So buckle up, here we go, starting off with what it takes to become a graffiti artist. The first thing on our to-do list is to pick a name to go ahead and work with. Now, when you're this early on, when you're kind of just dipping your toes into the art form, your name doesn't really matter. It's very common for people to change their name as they continue through the years. So I recommend just picking anything that you kind of stumble upon that you find fun to write. Mess around with some tags, mess around with some throwies if you enjoy it, mess around with some pieces, and just have fun. Don't really focus too much on fundamentals or anything of that sort, which, I mean, if you're a long-time viewer of this channel, that probably sounds really weird coming from me. But in these early days, really what we're looking for is to foster a passion and a love for this art form. And if you happen to find the fundamentals fun, like I do, then great, fine, perfect, work on that. But most people don't really work that way. So do the art form to enjoy it when you first begin. We want to kind of really engross ourselves in this community. So how do we go about doing that? All it takes is a pen, pencil, or some kind of writing utensil, and some paper. That's it. And really no different than art. Once you have those tools, you can just start doing the art form. Now comes the difference between a writer and a graffiti artist. A writer is somebody who does graffiti illegally. They don't ask for permission to put their name on a surface, and they put it out there publicly. A graffiti artist is just somebody who does graffiti. So a person sketching in their book counts as a graffiti artist. A person doing little hand styles, throwies, and pieces in their black books, on their iPad, whatever the case is, that's a graffiti artist. A writer is somebody who's gonna be doing it on walls outside. That means that yes, every single writer is a graffiti artist, but not every graffiti artist is a writer. That's a really important distinction to make. Truth be told, a lot of the community and culture aspect of this is going to happen on the writing side of things. We have some videos that you can go ahead and check out for information about some of the risks that you might expect, and also plenty of videos teaching you the fundamentals behind how graffiti is done. Feel free to check those out in the description and in the cards above. I can't fit everything in the cards, so we're gonna have a lot more links in the description if you're new. One of the very first things is you have to learn the history of graffiti. This is a little bit difficult because graffiti wasn't super well documented when it originally started. There's a book I highly recommend. Subway Art is a really interesting read. It kind of gives a peek back into the past as to how the community and culture was back then. It also gives you a good foundation of the ethics. You have to watch Style Wars if you're new to graffiti to kind of get an understanding of the community back then and where graffiti came from, essentially the roots. You can find the movie for free here on YouTube if I remember correctly, and it's actually where my intro comes from. Rest in peace to Shy. These will also let you know many of the big players in the game at that time, many of the legends that ended up being made. Now, not everybody in the books, not everybody in the movies is a legend, but many of them are. And on top of that, people that aren't in those movies and books are also legends. So I recommend doing a little bit of research into the history of graffiti just to familiarize yourself with some of the big players from around the world and from different time periods. As these names, people like Scene, Cap, Futura, Zephyr, Chino, so on and so forth, the list goes on, these are the names of legends. And legends names are off limits. Now, I wouldn't fault anybody who just started graffiti and they're using a legend's name, but if you do find that you are using a legend's name, then it's recommended you have respect for the community and you changed your name. Now, as you kind of get more invested in graffiti, you might start to look at different crews and you might find yourself trying to get into some crews. You might even find yourself trying to make a crew. In all honesty, that's probably the best route to go if you're just, newer to graffiti in general, as you have, the say as to who gets in and who doesn't. That being said, this isn't really too accessible for everybody to do, as not everybody lives in a graffiti densely populated area. Not everybody knows graffiti artists, not everybody meets them, right? So you may not really be able to do that. When it comes down to crews, be careful what crews you try to get into. Not every crew is really meant for you, and that's alright. That's kind of how they're supposed to work. The crew is meant to be a tight-knit group of friends that you can depend on and trust. That's your average graffiti crew. But then you also have numbers crews. Crews that are focused on just getting as many people in the crew as possible to put the crew name up. That way the crew in general gets popular. In really large number crews, most people don't even know who's in the crew with them, and they don't at all care about you. They will snitch on you, which is another thing with crews in general. Even the tight-knit group of friends, they are likely to snitch on you. This is a big risk with crews and something to very much think about. In general, crews don't really provide too much of a benefit other than having dependable people that you can go out with that will reliably watch your back. But But you can also get that same exact thing without being in a crew at all, so it kind of undermines the whole entire idea of a crew. On the flip side of that, especially if you're on the more mural and legal side of things, a crew is just a group of people you enjoy being around, and, well, you can just enjoy their company under that crew name. While that also applies to the writing side of things, that's likely the one big benefit of being in a crew. So don't really rush getting into a crew. And this is even more true when you're younger. When you're younger and you're trying to get into crews, these younger crews tend to be very just filled with drama. And it's unnecessary drama. It really is just like schoolgirl drama that you have no business getting involved with. All of it is petty. If you're older, different story. The drama tends to be slightly less, but not by much in all honesty. So if you can, prioritize any kind of crew that is really down to earth, really kind of relaxed, chill, trying to do their own thing and have fun. As you become more invested in the art form and you decide that you want to take things a little bit more seriously and grow your skill and you're done just drawing just to have a good time for the instant gratification, then it's time to actually start focusing on the basics. And we have a plethora of tutorials here on the channel, literally hundreds of critique videos, and this playlist right up here, which is an amazing playlist for learning each one of graffiti's fundamentals. That's going to be what you want to do. You want to practice graffiti's basics, which can be a bitter pill to swallow when you first start that process, but I promise you it pays off in the long run. And our book that we have in the description down below can help you do that. That book teaches you each one of graffiti's fundamentals in a way that no other book on the market does. We have hundreds of illustrations with every single lesson. That way anybody can follow, whether you're brand new to graffiti or experienced. And our lessons are fine-tuned for brand new graffiti artists, but they're deep enough to also teach experienced graffiti artists plenty of things. You can find a link to that in the description down below. We have digital versions on our online store, theartistblock.inc, with physical copies over on Amazon. It'll be the first two links in the description. Now at this point you might have a little bit more experience, but you're still relatively new to graffiti. New writers tend to go crazy hitting anything that they can possibly find. In cities, this might mean that they're doing a lot of very ambitious spots, and that's going to get you a lot of notoriety within the community. In smaller towns and just smaller areas in general, the things new graffiti artists tend to hit are really small. They're not really all that large, and there's not much of a population of other graffiti artists to really give notoriety in the first place. And this is where we get into the topic of kings and legends and other such things. A king is a writer who's hit just about everything they possibly can within a specific area, and they're consistent. They undoubtedly have more than anybody else within this area, and that's what makes them a king. But the thing with this title is that it either has to be bestowed by another king, or you have to hit so much and your work has to be decent quality at very least, which is not too hard to achieve, that your right to the title is undeniable. Now new writers tend to look at what they've hit and think immediately that they're a king, especially when they're in a smaller area because there's no other fish in the pond. So they see what they've done and they go, oh, I'm the only one doing it, therefore I am king. But it's like, well, there's nobody else here. And all of this requires that you do have some decent skill level, because, well, if there's a graffiti populace around you, then a different writer who's been doing it longer, who's better in just about every way, is going to come around and stomp all your stuff out if you're not at least decent, and therefore you'll never get the title. This is what being king entails. A great example is somebody like RD. RD's been doing it for decades. The dude's been going nuts for ages. But this isn't really a title that you get by hitting stop signs and hitting, little tiny things and doing a throwy here and there, or getting up in a small area that doesn't have a lot of competition. And the title of king is exclusive to writers. Only writers can achieve that title, because it requires that you get up. Now, a legend is somebody who changes graffiti on a global scale. This is easier to do with social media, admittedly. It's not too dissimilar than, fame, where famous people back in the day had to actually have some kind of skill or something notable that they've done, as to where nowadays you just need a lot of social media followers to become famous. It's very similar to that, where you had to change graffiti on a global scale to become a legend, and now you have to change graffiti on a global scale even more so to really stand out amongst other people that just have large followings. The way this translates back to graffiti is the fact that you might have a graffiti artist with a lot of followers, but simply having a lot of followers doesn't make them a legend. The question then becomes, what have they done to change graffiti on a global scale? Back in the 70s and the 80s, you had graffiti artists that were building the foundation of this community. So a lot of those graffiti artists that partook in that in any kind of notable way at all, even the kings, they became legends because they built the foundation in which we stand on to this day. Legends after that point became people who pushed style forward or did extreme feats like Saber in the LA River. And that's really what it takes to become a graffiti artist, and then some. If you guys have extra tips for people just getting into graffiti, or if you're just getting into graffiti and you have a question, feel free to leave it in the comments down below. And if you want to check out some of those graffiti tutorials, you'll find them right over here with more graffiti content right down here. And don't forget about the book that we have in the description as well. I'll catch you guys back here next week. Thanks for watching.